Hello, Ken Spriggs here again. Doing a little addendum video to add on to my last one. Actually, it's more of a 1.5 version of my first part of my Jupiter 2 tiny 3D printed build. I went back and took a look at it, and I realized that I showed pretty good detail of how I made the rotating lights and how I attached them in for the top dome, and explained a little bit about them and how they worked from Evan Designs. I did not really show that same process for the core at the bottom, which was a little more complex, obviously. So I wanted to add on a little video here to show that process and just kind of explain more and show a diagram of how I did that wiring. I did not customize this lighting myself. The rotator circuit came pre-wired from Evan Designs, which I highly recommend. But I did modify it quite a bit and add additional lights and different lights on that I got from them as well. A recent post on a Facebook group that I belong to brought a lot of questions about it, and I didn't want to give the impression that I had custom made this circuit or anything like that, or it's something that I could produce and give to you. You could make it yourself very easily, and you could do what I did. So I wanted to make this video, we'll call it 1.5 of the original tiny Jupiter 2 build, and just kind of go over briefly how I wired in the lights for the core, the engine core at the bottom, and brought those all together. And that'll kind of bring us up to date on where we are with the current Jupiter 2 with its top and bottom lights functioning. So, okay, let's get and take a look. All right, so here's the basic circuit. The circuit itself is fairly simple. And as I said, it comes pre-wired from Evan Designs, and it's called a rotator circuit. So what they send you is you get this long set of red and black wires for the power supply. You get the little circuit, which is very tiny. It still wouldn't fit in this kit, but for other kits it would be fairly easy to put it into. And then it has 3 wires coming off of it, which when you get it, it has 3 SMDs already wired into it. And you have a choice of red or blue. And I just chose blue. I didn't use those though. I cut them off. I snipped them off. Before I did that, what I did was I taped them down onto my cutting board, and I put them into the right order that they would rotate, and I just numbered them 1, 2, and 3. Put a piece of tape on it so you can see, just so it would go from left to right, and I would know what that order is. Once I know that order, I don't have to glue the SMDs into the ship in any particular order at all. I just have to make sure that when I run the wires and connect them, and I also numbered them 1, 2, and 3, as you can see right here, that they go into the right one. So 2 goes into 2, 1 goes into 1, 3 goes into 3. And all this is doing really is it is alternating, lighting up 1, then it lights 2, then it lights 3, back to 1, back to 2, back to 3, and it just keeps doing it. So if you put them in a circle, it looks like they're rotating. And the more that you add to the circuit, the more it looks like it's rotating. The more obvious the rotation is. So as I showed in my first video for this kit, I showed making the little one at the top and how I wired those in. Now I didn't really show wiring in the ones at the bottom. I showed the final result, so I want to show a little bit more of that. So what I did for the bottom is I first of all just drew off some lines and kind of used these little notches for the interior as my guide, because they line up with the front of the ship. So the front of the ship is going to be that little window. So that little window has one of these notches right in the middle of it. This one right here. Get a little pointer. So this one right here is dead center in the front. So I just marked a notch and I notched it here, and then I just alternated notches around. So I would have 6 of them because I'm doing 6 lights in the bottom. Excuse me. Sorry about that. All right, so here's kind of a diagram of how I did it. So here's the bottom core. Now, because I only really have 3 different connectors that are rotating, 1, 2, and 3, I have 2 lights per line that are alternating. So 2 is the opposite of 2, 1 and 1, 3 and 3. So that way, at any given time, you have 1 is on, then 2 is on, then 3 is on, and then so on. And it just rotates around that way. So when it's lit up, you're going to have one on the front, one on the back lit up, then these 2, then these 2, and it's going to give it more of that view of rotating. Now on the top, there's only 3, so it doesn't matter. We're 3 in a tiny little circle. So I don't have to worry about having additional ones. I could have done, and I thought about doing maybe 9. And if you had a little bigger version of this ship, you could do more and just add them. But just keep in mind, then you would have 3 alternating and so on. It would give it a little different thing. So the more that you have, the less you're going to have a true 1 light spinning around. Which I'd have to look at the big one. I have the bigger Jupiter 2 and just see if that's really what it does. But it's a little more complex. But this circuit works great for the really tiny Jupiter 2 for sure. And then all I have to do is make sure that the 2s are connected and labeled, the 3s are connected and labeled, the 1s are connected and labeled, and the same from the top. When I bring down the top wire, connect the same one, also lining it up. So the front, I'm also going to line up with the front of the top. And the one on the top is a little easier because I have the center one right there in the front of this little ridge piece here, and then the 2 on the sides. So I could consider that 1. I'm not sure how I did it, but like 1, 2, 3, and then on the bottom, same thing. 1, 2, 3, and so on. Or 1 in the front, 2, and then 3. And as long as I keep those sequences, I keep the wires correct as far as the numbering for these ones right here, then they're going to connect up to this right, and they're going to rotate correctly. All right, so not that complicated, and most of the wiring is already done for me. All I have to do is put them in there in the proper way. All right, so let me show you a still here real quick. I don't have, or a couple stills of gluing the tiny Z LEDs into the bottom. I already showed how I did the top on my previous video, but here are the Z LEDs. These are super, super tiny. That's the actual light right there. So very, very small, but very bright. And for the core, I used the warm whites. And so I drew, as I said, with a pencil, the 6 spots where I wanted to put them around inside of the kit. And so that way all I had to do was take some 5-minute epoxy, dab it into that one little section, center it on the little line, and then as it's almost setting up, I stick the SMD down into it. Actually, what I had done is I had taped it in and put it down in place and then put some 5-minute epoxy around it. And it actually worked in my favor that the epoxy went through the little holes in the grill at the bottom, so it extends the light. And the nice thing about epoxy is that it's clear, so the light goes through it, and then transmits it out through the bottom of the grills. So let me turn this on and I'll show you. You can kind of see the lights and how they rotate from the inside of it. So there you go. And you can kind of see that one in the back there that's coming on and going off, and so on. And you can see what I'm talking about. So at any given time, you have 2, then 2, then 2, and they rotate around. But it nicely gives that impression of it of it rotating. And I went with the warm whites because from all the different things I've seen, the bottom core is more of a yellowish hue, a warmer white hue. And then I went with the white in the top dome because that's how that one generally looks. And you can see the same thing. Okay, so then all 9 of these wires go into 1 or 3 wires that come out of the kit. So those are all wired inside here. And once they're all wired, they just leave the kit and they connect with the 3 out here. So all of this will be outside of the kit. And then any lighting inside of the kit, I'm going to be running through that hole as well. All right, so let me just show you a few stills of the gluing the SMDs into the bottom core. All right, there you go. So that's generally how I wired it up. And then once I got them all glued in place, I wired them each together as I showed in the diagram, 1 and 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3, and so on. And then I also wired the top ones into each. So I ended up with 3 different wires together, and then they went into the 3 wires that come out of the ship. And once I just kept them wired together and numbered, that's the key to this, I was able to just wire them into this. And then once I get my final connections to the ship, I'm gonna have to take these off, run them through the aluminum tube that I have into the ship, and then rewire them into this once I get the final setup in the derelict. So, but same thing, as long as I keep these numbered, I can even take a little bit of paint and maybe do red for 1, blue for 2, yellow for 3, whatever. As long as I know what they are, I can rewire them into it, and they're gonna do the proper sequencing. And all the connections are inside the ship for all 9 of them, so that's not a problem either. All right, and then one final thing I wanted to show you for the little dome, I just used I got this big old pack of Wiggle Eyes from Hobby Lobby, and I ended up getting these because the smallest ones here, which are 0.20 or 5 millimeter, I did not see them separately, so I ended up getting the bigger one. I figured I'd use these for other things too. It was pretty cheap. Used my 40% off, which I always do. So that's nice. Probably cost me about $4 or so. But this is the one I used, and there it is right there. So all you do is just run it along some sandpaper until you sand down that little white backing, and then you can cut it away with an X-Acto knife, take the little eyeball out, and you got a little clear down. There's a little profile of it. All right, and then I just use some canopy glue to glue that onto the top of the ship, and then that gives me the dome for the top. All right. Oh, sorry, let me try to hold that up here a little better. All right, so there again is my customized lighting. It's not custom lighting, it's customized. That's why I wanted to show it, because I didn't create the circuit or anything for it. All I did was adapt it and add the extra lights on that I wanted. And that's something that anybody else can do as well, and get that same result. All right, well, thanks again to all my new subscribers. I'm rapidly approaching 1,000, which is fantastic. Stay tuned. I will be working on this kit into the new year, and then start working on the derelict as well. And I'm already working with that and getting some ideas. So, okay. All right. Thanks a lot.